The long arm of the Irish Sea that reaches inland into County Down, Strangford Lough, is a unique environment where the interplay between land and sea allows the natural world to flourish. With over 2,000 marine species recorded to date, this is an area of huge importance for biodiversity. Twice every day, the water slides out of the loch, revealing over 50 kilometres square of mudflats. These mudflats draw thousands of birds who feast on the plant and marine life exposed by the receding waters. As winter approaches, the skies around the loch become alive with overwintering flocks. Some of these species complete epic journeys to make it to the shores of Strangford from as far away as Siberia, Iceland, Canada and the Baltic.
Strangford Lough is the most important bird estuary or tidal inlet in the entire island of Ireland. The birds that are coming in from the Arctic are arriving from August onwards. They will be peaking midwinter, so the brent will come in first, as will some of the wildfowl like the widgeon and the teal coming from the Russian flyway. Smaller species like knot and dunlin come in their vast flocks when things get a bit colder further north, either from Iceland or from Fenno-Scandinavia around Finland and northern Russia. So it takes the Baltic to go cold before we start seeing those. But they will be here by usually early December through to January and February, and then they'll start dispersing northwards back to their breeding grounds again. But as they leave, you do have the other migrants coming in from Africa to actually breed here. So you've got the Arctic tern, the sandwich terns, the cormorants that breed out in the islands. So the loch basically turns into a breeding nursery for all the summer residents and summer migrants. One of the most important species that Strangford has are the light-bellied brent geese that come in from the Arctic, Canadian Arctic, where they breed, and they come to Strangford to stage in early to mid-autumn. And we have anything up to 85% of the entire world population of this species coming to the few hectares of mudflat that they rely on in autumn.
Aside from the feathered tourists, there are many more settled species who make the loch their home all year round. Castle Espy, a wildfowl and wetlands trust reserve, allows the public to experience the bird life of the loch at close hand.
The vista and the light quality is extremely good from this site. So to see those vast flocks of brent or waders like knot and dunlin wheeling against the skyline is breathtaking. But young families definitely enjoy visiting us because it's a natural area. We have the birds that they can get close to with 40 species of birds from all over the world that you can actually get right up and feed out of your hand. Is quite a special experience.
Below the surface of the water is a varied and abundant realm of marine life. From the tiniest plankton to crabs, starfish and conger eels, all have a part to play in the ecology of the loch. Any sample of the water taken in summer is a rich broth containing the larvae of shrimps, crabs, worms, molluscs, starfish and fish, all of which settle in abundance in the waters here. The seabed is teeming with life.
There are some things that are found in Strangford Lough which have not been recorded elsewhere. But the special thing about Strangford Lough is the variety of life. A vast proportion of what is found all around the British Isles is found here in Strangford. And it's this variety that makes the place special.
We're surveying Strangford Lough, we're routinely monitoring it. We're trying to get an inventory of all the marine species to be found in Strangford Lough. So there's teams from all over the world, in fact, and they're bringing their expertise. And then by looking at the intertidal zone and also underwater, so there's a couple of dive teams who are diving in some of the areas of the loch and just trying to get a record.
This is something that we found today in about 20 metres of water just up in the loch from here in Portaferry. And it's something we call the Aplydium strawberry, or strawberry aplydium. It's a sea squirt. So it's an animal that's very closely related to you and I. It's got a little backbone, but they live on the seabed and they filter water, and they're very important parts of the ecosystem. And this is a very rare one. This one's not yet, it doesn't have a proper scientific name. It's not been described yet. I think this is the first time that I've seen it in the loch. So it's very, very small. It's only a couple of millimetres across, and it was growing on top of a reef. And we brought it up and we're examining it now. So yes, this is definitely the exciting find of the day for me.
I've been very fortunate, in 30 years to dive all over the world, and quite often people will say to me, where's your favourite? Where's the best place to dive? And it shocks them whenever I say, well, actually the best diving I found anywhere is Northern Ireland. The thing about Strangford, what makes it different, from diving coral reefs, is that when you dive on a coral reef, say in the Bahamas, virtually every dive you go on, you're seeing the same corals, the same fish, the same everything, maybe a slightly different shape. But when you go into Strangford Loch, depending on what part of the loch you're in, whether it's down in the Narrows where you get fast currents, or further up in the loch where it's more sheltered, you will get such a range of different habitats. And those habitats have got different species associated with them. And when you start to understand and think about why those creatures are there and what their advantage of being there is, you don't get that in these coral reefs.
While divers like Joe can experience the rich and varied ecosystem at first hand, those who don't take to the waters can also enjoy the diversity on offer by visiting the aquarium or simply exploring the shores at low tide to discover a taste of the treasures that lie beneath. Out on the loch itself, the larger marine mammals break the surface. Common and grey seals are plentiful, and from a boat on the loch, you might be lucky enough to spot porpoises and occasionally dolphins, whales and basking sharks. Plant life too is abundant and varied in the unique habitat of Strangford Loch and Lecale. Salt marsh is rare in this part of Ireland, but there are superb examples of it here. Alongside the marshes, lime-rich grasslands support orchids and spectacular wildflower meadows, while in other spots, deeper soil allows scrub to flourish with gorse, brambles and blackthorn.
The Strangford Loch and the Lecale area are incredibly important for their flora. And here at Killard, it speaks for itself, or should do. You don't really need to know an awful lot about flowers to realise that. We have a very, very special place here. These lands have remained quite wild, in a wild state, because they've not been ploughed and they've not been seeded. And that's perpetuated something which once was the glory of probably the whole of the island of Ireland, was very, very species-rich, flowery grasslands. And all sorts of other creatures can then reap the benefit of that. It's a magnificent dining table. This place offers an artist's palette, but in that the colours throughout the seasons change in such a stupendous and magnificent way. There is such a rare assemblage of flowers that won't be seen or hardly ever seen, elsewhere. We've so little left now of this kind of quality ground, so it makes it all the more important that we all care about the protection of these places. They're becoming really scarce wild resources, but thankfully here on Strangford Loch, very easy to actually find and enjoy. Almost anywhere on the shores, you'll be delighted by the flora. And then there are these really special places like Killard and like some of the islands which have not been treated by modern day agriculture.
Below the surface of the water, the plant life is equally rich and varied. Several varieties of seaweed flourish in these waters, providing food and shelter for many of the other creatures. With such a wealth of life and biodiversity represented at Strangford Loch and Lecale, it is vital that we conserve and maintain the environment for future generations to enjoy.